Hello everyone. Today I'm going to demonstrate how to connect your Android application with the Google App Engine backend. For this, you need the Google App Engine plugin installed and the Android ADT plugin installed in your Eclipse IDE. So you're good to go. To create an App Engine connected Android project, go to File, New, click on Other, and if you have the Google App Engine plugin installed, then you should find this option called App Engine Connected Android Project when you go to Android. So click on Next. Your project name. These two fields are needed by the example application that you get when you create this project. So right now these two fields can be empty. So just click on Finish. So once you finish, you'll get a project structure like this. The first folder will be of the Android project. This is a working example which you get when you create the project. And if you can try running this out, the details are available in the developer.google.com. I'm not gonna run this application. And the next folder will be of the App Engine web application that we usually get when we create a Google App Engine project. So even this will have the default working example which is needed by the Android application. So we are not going to run this. You can try running this out. The details are available in the developer.google.com. So what we are going to do is we're going to create our own App Engine created Android application. For that, first we need to create our entity. So to create an entity, create a simple Pojo object, and then create a Java class. Let's give this as Note and click on Finish. You'll get a simple Java class. So what we'll do is we'll create a Pojo object, that is a plain old Java object. So let's add an ID to our entity. Let's add the email address, the description, okay. These entities are enough for our simple application. So let's generate the getters and setters. For this, go to source and generate getters and setters. Okay, so we have generated the getters and setters. Now what you need to do is to annotate this class. Entity. These are the same JPA annotations, if you're familiar with that. Import the entity javax.persistence, import the entity, and let's annotate the ID using the ID entity. Okay, so the Pojo object has now been annotated. Okay, so let's save this. Okay, now the next step is you need to generate an endpoint class library for this class so that you'll get the REST API methods exposed. To do that, right click on node.java and go to Google and generate cloud endpoint class. Okay, so now you can see you got another Java file with the name node endpoint.java. So let's open this. So as you can see, this has some methods which are mapped to the basic REST API methods. For example, the get node uses the HTTP get method. Okay, similarly all the methods, basically the CRUD operations are exposed as REST API methods. The insert node is mapped to HTTP post. I shouldn't say mapped, in fact it uses the HTTP post. And you can see the update node uses the put, and the remove node uses the delete. So basically all the REST API methods are exposed. Okay, so now you need to test your generated API methods. Before testing that, let's run this application. Go to run as, go to web application. Okay, yeah, because you can see the application is now running. So now you can test your API methods. To test that, go to this URL, http localhost 888 AH API Explorer. Yes, so now you can see your endpoint API has appeared here. Let's click on that, and you can see all your API methods are available. So let's test the insert node API at first. I can add description, say simple, add email, email.com. ID can be anything, simple ID. Okay, and execute. As you can see, the query has been executed and we got the 200 OK response. So now let's test the get node method. The ID which we gave was the simple ID, execute, and you can see the response returned is 200 and you got the entry which you had created. And you can also see the entries which are created in the local data store. To do that, you need to go to this URL and you'll see the entities which are existing. You can click on list entities and you can see the entry which we just created using the API method. Okay, that is it. That is how you create the endpoint class and expose the API methods to the client. So the next step is to build an Android client which consumes these APIs. So let's do that. Before building the Android app to consume these APIs, you need to generate the cloud endpoint class library. To do that, go to Google and generate the cloud endpoint client library. This will take a while to generate. Okay, now the client library is generated. So the changes you can see is the folder has been created inside the Android app project when we generated the cloud endpoint library. Okay, so I have built a simple Android app, Android client to access those methods which we tested earlier. So let's look at that. It's a very simple app actually, where you have UI to choose between two buttons. One will list and the other one will insert, and depending on the choice of the user, either display items.java activity is executed, which will display the items, or the main activity which has the UI to insert the item. Okay, so let's look at the source code for both of these. First, the main activity where the user can insert the item. This is the basic Android code. If you can recognize this, you get the user data when he clicks on the submit button, email and description, and then you start the new endpoint task with the async task subclass inside this class, and do make sure that whatever code you write to access these API methods are inside an async task subclass. Okay, so let's look at the source code. When the Node endpoint builder is built with all these parameters, setting the data for the Node object using the set description, set ID, and set email address method. Then we are inserting the node using the API method which we had generated. Okay, so that will insert the node. So next let's look at the display items.java, and again it's the same thing here. Make sure you write this in the async task subclass whenever you're calling the API method. So when you execute the list node method, you get the response in the form of collection response node object. When you retrieve that, you can display it using a hash map. So I executed this in the onPost execute method, so that when this method completes retrieving the list, can display the retrieved items to the UI. So let's see the working of this. So run the Android application in an emulator as Android application. Please forgive the slow emulator. So here is the UI of the application. I've got two options, add note and list notes. Let's first insert a note. So before doing that, there's one more thing, one more really important thing to configure is the cloud endpoint utils.java. Now you get this by default when you generate the project. Here there are quite a few configurations you need to do. One important field is this one, the local Android run. As we are doing it right now, we are running it locally. So you make sure that this is set to true. If this is set to false, then whatever data you push, that won't be stored locally. Okay, so since it's set to true now, let's test whether this runs. Click on add note, enter the email. That's a nice email, and description as something, and the ID we have configured it by default as the date. So let's push. You must get a message when the data is pushed, and there's a message, it has been pushed successfully. So let's verify this. To verify this, go to the same console which you had used to verify the entity earlier. So let's refresh, and you can see the data which we pushed is here. The ID has got the date at the time when we inserted the data, and the description as the email address as given by us. So now let's list this. Click on list notes, and you get the same entity in a list view. So this is how you can test your application locally before deploying it. Now in order to deploy, the deployment steps are the same as you normally do for any other Google App Engine application. And before deploying, you make sure that this field is set to false, as now it's not going to be a local run. And you need to update the application ID in the app engine web.xml as you normally do for the other app engine application. And then you just need to deploy it. Google, deploy to app engine, and click on deploy. So after deploying, after the application is successfully deployed, the data that that the client pushes, the client submits, can be seen by going to your application. Just click on the application in the appengine.google.com URL and go to datastore viewer. As you can see, the data which has been inserted by the client can be found in datastore viewer. So that's it. That's how you connect your Android application to the Google App Engine backend. Thank you.